hey, have you ever had somebody's crazy try to get on you? I think we've all had friendships, family members, maybe somebody you have history with, you feel like you owe, or maybe if you're like me, you saw the crazy you were in somebody else and you want to help. It's an admirable thing to have compassion and empathy and care for somebody. But sometimes we end up caring more about their chaos than they do, to the point it begins disrupting our life and disrupting our peace. And when it gets to that point, you need a strategy. You need to tap the brakes on crazy. There's a Proverbs I was reading this morning. It's in chapter 22. It says, "Make no friendship with a man given to anger, nor go with the wrathful man, lest you learn his ways and become entangled yourself in a snare." And I think that this really applies great for the context I'm talking about, that sometimes close proximity can cause you to get ensnared in their chaos, ensnared in their wrath and their ways. I think that you need a strategy on, if you will, on how to do this, on how to tap the brakes in these relationships. Sometimes that means limiting the access where there was once unlimited access. That sometimes you still care, but not from close proximity. In other words, you can still care from a distance. And this is hard, but sometimes it's up to you to do so, because you're the one that's going to become ensnared in their chaos. And in order to protect peace, you don't just limit the access in the relationship. Sometimes you change the category. If someone was to hand you their child and say, "Here, hold them for 15 minutes. I've got to run to the ER and drop somebody off. I'll be right back." And in that moment, you grab a hold of this child that's like completely chaotic. You know that in that 15 minutes, you won't change their diet, their worldview, their language, their behavior, but you would just try to protect them until you could get them back in their parents' arms. And the point is that sometimes in relationships, you run into people that are delusional about their health, their finances, their relationships, about themselves. They just will not face the reality of the life and the mess that they're in, maybe that you used to be in and you know the way out, but they just don't want to listen. And so sometimes you take relationships that are beginning to disrupt your peace and your life, and you change the category that they're in. You can still care, but not from close proximity. You can still love and pray for them. So maybe you need to limit some access with some people. Maybe you need to limit some access altogether. Hopefully not. Maybe you need to begin to say, "I'm not going to partner with chaos. I'm not going to do deals with chaos." Maybe you need to understand that you're not going to always have mutual understanding. That was really important for me. I always wanted to have mutual understanding of the truth, and they just don't care. They don't care about my story of repentance and change. So hey, maybe you need to change the category with some folks.